The midterm elections are finally here and polls have closed in many parts of the country. We will soon know the balance of power in Washington and the next mayor of Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jacob Wheeler.
And I'm Danielle. Tonight marks the end of a bitter and hard-fought election season. We will keep you up to date on election results and discuss the future of our nation's democracy.
Some results are starting to come in. I'm Maya Marivena, and I'll be following Senate and House races nationwide.
And I'm Marco Ramirez. 2 California races could determine the majority party of the House. I'll have the latest on those races and the impact of young voters on this election.
And here's what's at stake tonight. All 435 seats in the House are up for grabs. Republicans only need to flip 5 of those seats to regain the majority.
The Senate is a little more complicated right now. Republicans and Democrats share a 50-50 split, but 35 seats are up in the air. Republicans only need 1 seat to regain the majority. Our national correspondent Maya Bennett is here to break down the key Senate and governor's races we're following tonight.
Tonight, we'll be following 8 key Senate races that will determine the balance of power in the U.S. Senate, with a special emphasis on 3: Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Let's take a look at the significance of Georgia for a second. From 1996 to 2016, every president Georgia picked was Republican. That changed in 2020 when Georgia voted for Joe Biden and 2 Democratic senators. Raphael Warnock was one of those senators, but because the seat he was filling was from a special election, Warnock is now running in a tight race against former NFL player Herschel Walker for a full term. These results are in from AP at 7:10 p.m. Currently, Raphael Warnock has 48.9% of the vote compared to Walker's 49.2%. So we see Walker with a slight lead. Over 2.2 million people in Georgia cast their ballots before Election Day, and those early votes have a history of being Democratic, so we'll see what that means for Walker's edge tonight as more early votes are counted, but as we're also getting these live time election results. Let's turn to Pennsylvania now. This could be another race that determines the balance of power in the Senate. John Fetterman is very much an established politician in Pennsylvania, serving as the state's lieutenant governor, but in May he suffered a stroke. The stroke visibly impacted his speech and his auditory processing, leading to a weak performance in his one debate with Mehmet Oz. Now, currently we see Fetterman doing very, very well, up about, 5 percentage points against Oz. But again, like we said, in the Georgia race, these are largely early votes that were being counted. I believe in Pennsylvania, they started to be counted as early as 7 o'clock this morning. So we'll see if Dr. Oz tightens this or tightens Fetterman's lead, or maybe even takes a lead in the poll tonight as more of the votes are coming in from those who voted today. We also in Pennsylvania have the governor's race. The importance of this race cannot be overstated because the Pennsylvania governor appoints the Secretary of State. This person will oversee the 2024 presidential election. Mastriano is considered a member of the far right. He was at the Capitol on January 6th and has openly said that he does not believe Joe Biden won the 2020 election. Currently, Shapiro sits at 56.6% of the vote compared to Mastriano's 41.6%. But we'll see what starts to happen as more of these in-person votes are tallied. And one last race we're looking at right now is the Georgia governor's race. So we see Stacey Abrams, the Democratic candidate, very far behind Brian Kemp. A lot of the polling places in Georgia, or I believe 6 locations exactly, won't be closing until 10 p.m. their time zone because they started later than expected. So we'll see if Abrams is able to narrow this lead that Kemp clearly has right now. It's going to be an exciting night here in the election room. Let's turn it back to our team for some more information.
Thank Thank you so much, Maya. And we turn to an election right here in our own backyard. We will soon know the 43rd mayor of Los Angeles, and whoever wins tonight will confront many city challenges, including crime, homelessness, affordable housing, inflation, and climate change.
Rick Caruso and Karen Bass are in a tight race. Bass has continued to leverage her liberal and Democratic support, while developer Rick Caruso targets a new coalition of Latino voters and San Fernando Valley residents.
It's going to be a tight race, and we start our coverage tonight with reporter Olivia Tyler, who is live at the Hollywood Palladium covering Karen Bass's watch party. Olivia.
Hi everyone, I am here at the Hollywood Palladium for Karen Bass's watch party. It has not started yet. It starts at 8 p.m. right when the polls close. We are expecting this to be a tight race like you guys said. We're expecting to find out a winner within the next few days. However, if Karen Bass does win, she will become the first black woman as mayor of Los Angeles. Eric, what else can you tell us?
Well, first, you guys know the weather today has been absolutely dreadful, so we'll see if that affects voter turnout. As Olivia said, the watch party hasn't started yet, but I'm sure you can hear some of the music, everything, so we expect it to become more lively. If Congresswoman Bass wins, she feels that she's the right candidate because she has 20 years experience in the political career and she's an LA native. So we'll keep you updated as the votes come in and as the party gets more lively. Back to you in the media center.
Thank you, Eric and Olivia. Our live coverage continues with reporter Vincent DeMonte at the Rick Caruso watch party at the Grove. Vince, we're jealous of you. What's the update?
Hi guys, it's Vincent DeMonte here. As you can see, we are here live at the Grove at Rick Caruso's campaign party here tonight. The man of the hour has just walked into the building and is getting swarmed by reporters of all kinds down here right now. But as of now, the energy is just getting started. We have a long night ahead. Again, the polls close at 8. So Rachel, how about you tell us a little bit about kind of the recent polling and what's going on here for the Caruso campaign?
Thanks so much, Vincent. I'm Rachel Hallett. Well, last we heard, the polls are really close. It's Karen Bass at 45 and Rick Caruso at 41 with a margin of error of about 4. So the polls are closing at 8 p.m. tonight. That's pretty soon, and we're hoping to get some more updates around then.
So be sure to stick with us throughout the night, and we'll be sure to keep you up to date with the current LA mayoral race. Thank you so much. Back to you guys.
Quite the watch party there, Vincent and Rachel. Thank you so much. Wallace Annenberg Hall is where many students are watching election results tonight as they come in. Reporter Tracy Wang is live in Studio A with a look at that watch party. Tracy.
Thanks, Jacob. Yeah, Avery Goodman and I will be keeping a close watch on this Annenberg watch party right here. It's been great. We've been seeing students, professors, and community members come out to support USC in watching the election night. We will be having a couple guests here as well today from the watch party, and Bob Schrum, professor and director of USC's Dornsife Center for the Political Future. We are excited to meet everybody, and we're excited just to see how this election really goes down. Back to you, Jacob and Danielle.
It's really good to see all of these USC students so engaged in the election. And here in California, abortion is on the ballot. Voters will decide whether to make the right to choose part of the state's constitution. Voters are also weighing in on a number of issues and races. Our California correspondent Marco Ramirez joins us to explain what we should look out for.
That's exactly right. There are 7 propositions on the ballot tonight. Let's start with Proposition 1. This is going to deal with a woman's right to an abortion as well as other contraceptives. Now, abortion is currently legal in the state of California. It's been legal for quite some time. In fact, since the 1960s when Ronald Reagan signed into law. But if this proposition passes, what it will do is it will enshrine a woman's right to an abortion within the California state constitution, ensuring the future generations that there will be less dispute when it comes to the conversation about abortion. And that's, of course, unless the state constitution is changed. Let's get into backers of this constitution. Now, Newsom, he's an avid supporter of this proposition as he's donated $2 million. Furthermore, Planned Parenthood, California Medical Association, and Hillary Clinton, she paid a visit not too long ago to California, in fact, San Francisco, where she campaigned for this proposition. Now, opponents of this proposition, they're going to say that this is unnecessary since it's already legal to get an abortion in California. They say that it doesn't need to be enshrined within the state constitution. Furthermore, they say that it's going to cost taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. Lastly, they say it's going to make California a sanctuary state where people from outside the state are coming into the state to seek abortion. Now let's get into Proposition 26. This is going to deal with sports betting. Sports betting is actually illegal within California. However, what this proposition will do, if it passes, it's going to allow for in-person sports betting within tribal casinos, as well as the 4 racehorse tracks right here in California. In fact, the proposition actually used to be banned nationwide. However, in 2018, a Supreme Court ruling overturned that, and since then there's been sports betting legal to some extent within the states in California. Furthermore, what this proposition will do, it's going to allow roulette and dice games within these tribal casinos. But here's the catch. You're not going to be able to bet on high school or college sports. Backers of this proposition include Native American tribes. They say that this is going to bring in a lot of money, in fact, tens and millions of dollars that could be put towards things like schools, wildfire prevention, and other state priorities. Now, opponents of this proposition are going to be California card clubs. These card clubs say that this is going to run them out of business. Furthermore, opponents say that this could cause gambling addictions within the younger generations, as some tribal casinos are 18 plus. Let's dive right into Proposition 27. Don't get this one confused with Proposition 26. This is going to allow sports betting here in California, but online sports betting. We're talking about FanDuel, DraftKings here. And these are already apps that are popular in the East Coast and legal. Backers of this proposition say that 10% of the money that FanDuel and DraftKings make will go to the state of California, which could be hundreds and millions of dollars. And this money could be used towards things like homelessness. Opponents of this proposition are actually going to be the backers of Proposition 26. Remember, those Native American tribes are saying that this is going to run them out of business. And Newsom is another opponent of this proposition. And a big concern with this proposition is that on the East Coast, currently kids are getting access to sports betting since you can get it from the access of your phone. Now, this is something that opponents are worried about. They're saying that they don't want the younger generation here in California to deal with those issues. So once again, a yes vote on this proposition will allow sports betting online, and a no vote will keep things as they are. Now, experts stress the importance of young people voting. A representative from Power California, a group focused on bringing young voters to the polls, joins me now to talk about this issue. Aurora Castellanos, thank you so much for being here. Aurora, I want to start off with one question. What are some ways that you noticed politicians are connecting with the younger voters to get their vote?
I'm sorry, are you trying to speak to me?
Yes, it's an honor to have you here. I just had one question for you.
I think that you have the wrong person, though. I'm here to speak about Measure A. My name's Meredith Gallen.
Right, so it looks like we're having some technical issues here. Let's toss it right back to the anchors.
Thank you so much, Marco. So many important propositions on the ballot: that right to choose, the sports betting, that potential vape ban going into effect. So we're going to be covering all those propositions as the results come in and as those polls close here in California at 8 p.m. One thing I do want to talk about is the importance of the youth vote. We know that in 2018, they came out in record numbers in previous midterms from 36%, and this year there are some speculations that the youth vote is going to go up, but we'll see if that actually pans out. What are you seeing in terms of Gen Z candidates on the ballot winning or losing their races?
I think predominantly we know that youth voters are more likely to support Democratic candidates, and that is showing in the polls. That is showing in their engagement with who they're choosing to support them, and I think overall they believe that those moderate and more progressive ideologies identify with what they believe in.
There's definitely a generational shift, and we're seeing that in exit polling. For voters from ages 18 to 25, they're breaking for Democratic candidates by double digits. On the other hand, voters over the age of 45 are breaking for Republican candidates by also double digits. So one of the important nuggets to keep an eye on as we continue on this election night. And also tonight, USC has a very diverse student body with a wide range of opinions.
We talked to some students and asked what issues matter most to them in this election.
So we're going to be having some technical difficulties on that SOT, so we're going to move on. Karen Bass and Rick Caruso have been crisscrossing LA County since last spring, drumming up support on both sides.
Reporter Hannah Joy takes a look back at the two campaigns.
We apologize for that technical difficulty. Staying on the race, though, we know that this race is a reminder of the influence USC has on LA politics. USC is the largest private employer in the county, so the next mayor is likely to work closely with university administration.
Both Democrats Caruso and Bass have ties to the Trojan family as well as some USC scandals. And now we're going to toss to Studio A. Tracy, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Danielle. Sitting here with me now is Professor Bob Schrum of USC and Director of USC Dornsife Center for the Political Future. Thank you, Professor Schrum, for being here today.
Always happy to be with you guys.
Wonderful. So we're going to start off with a pretty important question. You know, you've worked on John Kerry and Al Gore's campaigns in the past, as well as numerous Senate campaigns, right? And for you and for our country, I mean, elections are really part of our democratic DNA, wouldn't you say?
Right.
And in this year's midterm elections, there are nominees for governor as well as Secretary of State in multiple states saying that they're election deniers. Now, do you think the controversy over voter fraud claims would threaten our important democratic process?
Absolutely. And I think most of the election deniers are probably going to lose. I think Mark Fincham, who's the most notorious one in Arizona, who's running for Secretary of State, will not get elected. I think that Arizona is becoming a more moderate, even more democratic state. But I think you're going to find a lot of responsible Republicans are not going to want to vote for someone like that.
100%. And speaking on some more top-of-mind issues for Gen Z and college students like me, we have inflation, reproductive rights, as well as, you know, student loans are definitely a concern for us right now. I mean, what were the issues from ages 18 to 34? Like, what do they care about the most? And why do you think made them go to the polls this time?
Well, I wish more of them had gone to the polls, frankly. I think the economy is a concern for younger people. Student loans and student debt, that's a major concern. And in fact, President Biden's trying to do something about it, and Republicans are suing him in court to try to stop him. I think reproductive rights was the great underrated issue of this election. I mean, if you look at the exit poll in Pennsylvania, it's right up there with the economy as a major driver of vote. And that's one of the reasons the Democrats, I think by the end of the night and the end of the week, when we finally count all the ballots, will probably have the best performance of an incumbent president's party in a midterm since 2002.
I see. Yeah, and for young voters like me, I mean, social media is really how we get our information, right? And has the misinformation on social media been adequately addressed since the 2020 elections, and especially in this midterm election?
No, the misinformation on social media is rife. It's multiplying. You have a new owner of Twitter who actually propagates misinformation himself. And, you know, social media, the internet, has had two almost competing effects.
Yeah.
One is to democratize politics. That is, more people can get involved, more people can give money. Barack Obama never would have been elected without it because it enabled him to raise money at a time when most of the Democratic establishment was for Hillary Clinton. But on the other hand, it has repealed Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the senator from New York, who he had an old adage, which is everybody's entitled to their own opinions. Nobody's entitled to their own facts. Today, everybody can get their own facts. Everybody can be their own network. You can find a site that's going to agree with you. So we have like something like 35 or 40% of people in this country who believe that the 2020 election was stolen when Joe Biden won a clear electoral majority and won the popular vote by over 7 million.
Right. So this is a huge concern for us.
And your generation may be the one that's going to have to figure out how to solve it. So get into power as quickly as you can.
Well, I'm seeing that this midterms election is one step forward to that future.
Yeah, the first person from your generation was just elected to Congress.
Yes, we are really excited about that as well. Thank you so much for being here, Professor Schrum. Your insight was really important for us here today. And as you can see, the watch party is still going on. I hope you enjoy the rest of the night.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, fine.
Back to you, Jacob and Danielle.
Experts stress the importance of young people voting. A representative from Power California, a group focused on bringing young voters to the polls, joins me now to talk about this issue. Aurora Castellanos, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So I want to dive in with the first question. What are some ways that you notice politicians are connecting with the younger voters to get their vote?
Yeah, when they speak to the issues that really matter to them, that's when they're able to get their attention, and when we are looking at young voters, they care about the things that most other people care about. They care about issues like the economy. I can actually tell you that we have been going out to communities, trying to get out the vote, specifically looking at voters between the ages of 18 to 34. And everyone is voicing that the main issue that they care about is the economy. And we actually see it even with the folks who are working with us, going into the community. They're working in more than one job and trying to connect with people to be able to find solutions to those issues that they're facing on a daily basis.
Right, and the Circle Center at Tufts University reported that there was an 11-point increase in young voters from the 2016 election to the 2020 election. Do you foresee an even bigger turnout this election cycle?
We're hoping. We've been going out, connecting with folks. We know that, especially for first-time voters, it's about breaking the barriers of how they go through the process of actually casting their ballot and making sure that they know where it is that they can be going to voting. So we've been trying to fill in those gaps and trying to reach folks where they're at, connecting with them one-on-one through the phones, door knocking, texting them on social media, doing a little bit of everything, just reaching them where they're at so that they can have all the information that they need to be able to get out and actually cast their ballot.
Right, social media, like you said, is a big factor. But what do you think? Who should be more worried about winning the youth vote right now? Would you say it's Democrats or Republicans?
I will say anyone that's not really speaking to the issues that are impacting young people. I don't think it's a Democrat or Republican, but it's really looking at who's going to be the folks who are going to be really delivering on their promises and making sure that they're speaking to the issues that young people care about. Anyone that is looking out for the interests of greedy corporations, I can tell you is not speaking to the young people and the young voters. So the folks that are really looking at the issues that are impacting the community, from the economy to holding greedy corporations accountable so that they can pay what they owe, are the ones that I think are going to be most likely to get their support.
Right, and I want to dive into that connection that Power California has with these young voters. Your website says that, quote, right now the voices that are most missing from our systems of governance are young people of color and their families. What activism has Power California done to encourage young people of color to exercise their right to vote?
Yeah, I mean, we go into the communities, we go into the schools, we're meeting people where they're at so that we can ensure that they know how to participate as part of our voting system. And also so that they can get inspired to be running for office as well. Ideally, the folks who are organizing their communities and are putting in the work on the day in, day out are the ones that are also going to be running for office so that they can take the issues from the streets to the different elected bodies up and down the state so that we can continue to have that drive of folks who are making a difference at every level.
Thank you so much for joining us, and keep up that great work with Power California. Now we're going to toss it to our national correspondent, Maya Mari Vinette. Maya, what do you have for us?
We have some election night magic happening right before our eyes. Our first race we're calling. I'll wait for a minute for this to pop up on screen, but I have been told that we have results in from Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is, we talked about it at the beginning, it was Maestro versus Shapiro. Shapiro is the state's attorney general. He was a member of the state House Representatives, and he was a member of his county board of commissioners. And we can confirm, based on the polling results that we're looking at and the projections that we're watching tonight, that Shapiro will be the next governor of Pennsylvania. That means AP is calling it. We can confirm, based on what AP has called, that Shapiro will be the next governor of Pennsylvania. This means Democrats will be keeping the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania because the current governor, Tim Wolf, is also a Democrat. Let's take a minute to talk about the landscape of Pennsylvania. Joe Biden, our current president, he's known jokingly in politics as the son of Scranton because he loves referring to his love for Scranton, Pennsylvania, his hometown, a place he spent a lot of time as a young man. But let's talk about these margins in Pennsylvania because Pennsylvania will be a huge state going into 2024. Now, Biden won Pennsylvania in 2020, but he won it by a margin of about 1.17%. Now, this is still a bigger margin than what Trump won by back in 2016. Trump won by a margin of about 0.72%. And what these numbers tell us is that voters in Pennsylvania aren't particularly married to one party. They will go wherever they feel their issues are most being heard and represented. And let's learn about some more of these issues that are really important in this election. I'll turn it back to the main desk for that.
Definitely a big race to call. Maya, thank you so much. Coming up, we're going to speak to the president of USC Trojan Democrats. All of that and more after a short break.
Worried your friend's struggling but don't know how to reach out?
You could say, how are you, or get a fake tattoo. You could ask with an app if it works for you. You could write them a text or knit them a sweater. If you can't be together, you could write them a letter. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking. You could chat on the game, kick off your flip-flops. You could ask on your couch while you binge watch. However you do it, you gotta ask a friend. And if they don't share, you can ask again. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking.
There are a lot of ways to reach out to a friend about their mental health. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org.
Hey world, I have a quick message. It's about safe driving. All right, let's go. Anytime you're driving, have the seatbelt buckle tight. Both hands on the wheel and your phone out of sight. When not in your hand, trying to text somebody back. Because if you do, your car might get smacked. The moral of the story, just put your phone down. The people on the road will stay safe and sound. Put your phone down, put your phone down. People on the road will stay safe and sound. Yeah.
I'm Jenny Garth, and as a mother of 3, I know kids worry about a lot of things. Getting enough food to eat shouldn't be one of them. But here in America, that is a real worry for 1 in 5 children. This is unacceptable, and something Feeding America is working to solve. Through a nationwide network of food banks, Feeding America serves virtually every community in the United States, including yours. See how you can help your community. Visit feedingamerica.org. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America.
Let's turn to reporter Hannah Joy now in the Media Center for more about voting in the midterm elections.
Much, Dario. We do have Sarah Steinecker, who is the political director of Trojan Democrats, and we also have Hannah Woodworth, and she is the student government president here at USC. And we'll be talking a little bit about voting, voter turnout, and why it's so important for young people to vote. So my first question to you all is, how important is it for young people between the ages of 18 and 24 to vote, especially when we know that, those numbers are really low?
Yeah, so I think it's really important for young people to be voting and exercising our right to vote. I think a lot of the stigma around voting as a young person is that our vote doesn't matter and that we aren't, necessarily catered to in terms of marketing and advertising as political campaigns. But the way that we get campaigns to focus on young people's issues is by voting and making sure that they know that we're a reliable voting bloc and making our voices heard. So I think that's really important.
Thank you, Sarah.
I completely echo what Sarah says, and there's really just so much at stake. And I think it's natural to question that because we're all youth voters, right? And we have been hearing time and time again, at least I have for every election that I voted in, that there's so much at stake. I mean, I had my first election that I voted in 2018, and my goodness, there's so much that was important that was happening then, but it's still true now. This is the first election that we're seeing after the insurrection. President Biden said that there are just about 300 candidates who are election deniers who are on this ballot. So now more than ever, for the sake of our democracy, we need to ensure that we are voting, but more importantly, we are placing informed votes.
And I heard you say something that was really important. You said that so much is at stake, and so what information is essential for young people to actually vote?
Well, when I think about information accessibility, I think about two things. One, just procedurally, how do you vote? So making sure that you have the information to cast your vote on time, but more importantly that you're making, as I mentioned earlier, an informed vote. When we think about how much is at stake, the first issue that comes to mind is women's reproductive rights. We saw the Supreme Court strip women of their reproductive rights just a few months ago, and while, yes, there's not necessarily a direct way to have this influence on the Supreme Court, but voting is your most direct way to influence the trajectory of our democracy through things like electing a representative who then has a choice in the vote for the confirmation processes for Supreme Court justices. So that's just one example of how just engaging in this basic civic duty is a clear path forward towards ensuring that we, moving forward, are able to save our democracy, but so much more. And what would you say, Sarah?
Again, just reiterating what Hannah said, I completely agree with everything that was said. Just making sure that you know how to vote is the most important thing. Everything varies state by state, what time you need to vote by, if you can vote by mail, absentee ballot. Making sure that you're checking your Secretary of State's website for the most accurate information is one of the best ways to be civically engaged. And again, just reiterating what is at stake at this election. A lot of us have been told that it's the most important election every 2 years. This is actually the first big election that I can vote in. And I'm just thinking about all the issues that are on the ballot. You know, in California specifically, we have the right to reproductive justice, Proposition 1, on the ballot. We also, across the country, have the opportunity to stand up for the foundation of American democracy. When you look at the election deniers and all of that, it really goes to the core of what America is. And so making sure that you are making an informed decision on what is really at stake for the future of the nation, it's just really important to think about.
And so, Sarah, I know you have been working with the BASS campaign, and so how has social media and campaign spending been a big factor in that campaign?
I think money is a huge factor in the mayoral campaign. Rick Caruso has launched the most wide spent ad campaign I've ever seen in a mayor's race. It's $100 million. And as much as, I have done some volunteer work with the campaign and they utilize social media, it's very hard for social media and grassroots marketing like that to combat with $100 million worth of advertising. Every time you're opening your computer, there's a Caruso ad. Every time you're watching a TV show or a YouTube video, there's a Caruso ad. So I think it's really just seeing what kind of demographics access what media forms the most and seeing how that influences the election.
So thank you so much, Sarah and Hannah. And that's all the time we have for today, but we encourage all young people to go out and vote and let your voice be heard because you matter.
Thank you so much, Hannah. And while they were having that panel discussion, we can make a projection in the Texas governor's race. AP, the Associated Press, is calling Greg Abbott, the Republican, the winner there. According to polls right now, he has a lead with 55.5% of the vote. Of course, he's fending off that challenge from Beto O'Rourke. He ran unsuccessfully for Senate against Ted Cruz the last time go around. So it looks like Republicans are holding their hold on Texas politics.
And now we're going to pass it over to Maya to talk more about the LA County Sheriff's race.
Their 4-year term. Police chief is trying to get his job. I caught up with both candidates on the campaign trail. Here's more.
Well, first, let's address what Mr. Luna just said. One, he's not going to touch public corruption. He won't touch it with a 10-foot pole because his job as puppet is to look the other way.
The race for LA County Sheriff has been a contentious one. Long Beach Police Chief Robert Luna is trying to unseat incumbent Sheriff Alex Villanueva.
Working with people, that doesn't mean you're a puppet. That means you're working with people to collaborate at the end of the day to serve our community, the members of our county, in the best way possible.
The LA County Sheriff's Department is the largest in the country. Whoever wins this race will be in charge of about 18,000 employees. Sheriff's deputies patrol neighborhoods, protect the courts, and oversee the jail system of about 15,000 inmates.
Throughout Villanueva's 4 years in office, there have been department-wide accusations of unconstitutional policing practices. The California Department of Justice launched an investigation into the Sheriff's Department in 2021. When asked about the controversies, Villanueva had this to say.
Well, when you talk about controversies, you're talking about the effectiveness of politicians leveraging the media for their gain. But when you look at actual facts, what makes me controversial is that I actually do my job.
He has very combative relationships with anybody who disagrees with him. The only way to get things done
in today's world is to have an excellent relationship with our community, with other government officials.
Luna has endorsements from the entire LA County Board of Supervisors and the Los Angeles Times. Villanueva is endorsed by the Association for Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs. So, will voters decide to bring back Villanueva, or will there be a new sheriff in town? For ATVN, I'm Maya Mari Bennett.
And we're definitely going to find out some stuff about the sheriff's race tonight. But joining us now is Meredith Galen from the LA County Public Defenders Union.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here with us tonight. So let's get right into it. Measure A gives the power to remove a sheriff, gives the Board of Supervisors, the power to remove a sheriff. If this measure passes, how do you think this will change the way sheriffs move in future terms?
Well, right now there's no real accountability mechanism for sheriffs in LA County, and that has caused lots of problems in the past. The sheriffs in LA County have broken the trust of the community in various ways, not only in the current administration, but in the last 3 years through acts of corruption, miscellaneous cover-ups, and ignoring acts of violence through sheriff's deputies. The hope from the community groups and labor groups that brought Measure A to the ballot is that with an accountability mechanism, we can protect the communities from a sheriff's department that feels like it's not necessarily answerable to the public.
Thank you for that, Meredith. Framing it as a way to promote accountability. But I want to ask, opponents of this have said that it might be giving the Board of Supervisors too much power. How would you respond to this?
It's a very high threshold. In order for a sheriff under the proposal of Measure A to be removed from office, it requires 4/5 votes from the Board of Supervisors. In addition to that, there's a pretty high standard that would have to be established. There would need to be a showing of a violation of law or pretty gross misconduct, including examples like repeated acts of neglect of duty, misappropriation of funds. So there would have to be a high level of proof in order to establish that.
So in the package we just aired, there was reference to possibly some abuses of power by the current LA County Sheriff. Is the measure that's currently on the ballot, Measure A, a result of his relationship with the Board of Supervisors, or has this been something that people have been expressing interest in for a while?
I will say that there has been concern within the community about the lack of accountability for the LA County Sheriff for a long time. As you may or may not know, a former sheriff, Lee Baca, was indicted. He served time in federal prison as a result of actions taken while he was in the head of this department, which you indicated is the largest sheriff's department in the country. They also oversee the largest jail system in the world. So there has been this kind of discontent and concern for a long time. The motion that was brought before the Board of Supervisors to bring Measure A to the ballot did happen during Sheriff Villanueva's tenure.
Thank you, Meredith. And our audience is largely college students who may not understand the relationship between the sheriff and the Board of Supervisors. So would you mind giving some context for that?
So it is a very interesting relationship. So first, I'd start by saying that the Board of Supervisors is a 5-member entity that basically runs the County of Los Angeles. The Sheriff's Department is the law enforcement, and I use that term a little bit begrudgingly, agency that is responsible for patrolling areas of unincorporated Los Angeles. They also, as you indicated, they are the force within the jails, and they provide services within the courtroom. Now, right now, there is some oversight through different agencies like the Inspector General's Office and the Sheriff Oversight Commission. They provide reports to the Board of Supervisors, but this current sheriff has repeatedly ignored subpoenas, failed to comply, so there has not been a real mechanism to ensure that the sheriff is providing information to the public, to our elected officials, and to the courts.
Thank you so much for that context. We're going to toss it now to our California correspondent to call some of those races we just mentioned. Thank you, Meredith.
That's right, and we do have a couple updates for you. AP News has just called the California governor's race. They said that Newsom is the winner versus his Republican counterpart, Brian Dale. AP News also called the senator race. They said that Alex Padilla will hold on to his seat versus Mark Muser, the Republican. Now we go to Avery in Studio A. Avery, what do you have for us?
Hi, everyone. I am here with student Logan Drone, who is joining us from the watch party. Thank you so much for joining us. So what brought you to the watch party tonight?
Well, specifically, I have a class in Annenberg, and we were talking about the election all day, and I was a little intrigued by it. Obviously, I voted as well, so I wanted to come by, kind of see what it was like, and honestly, the environment here has been awesome. Everyone out there is super engaged. It's been great. It's been a great night so far.
Thank you. Yeah. And what do you think about the turnout here? I know that it is a really big deal this election season that Gen Z go out and cast their votes. So what do you think about the turnout here? There's definitely a lot of students.
Yeah, there were definitely a lot more students earlier today, like right around 5 when the watch party really first started. There was a good amount of guest speakers and panelists out there too. But I'm surprised that there's still this many people out there right now too. Like, these people are really trekking through. I respect it, honestly. But it's awesome to see. It's really awesome to see that so many people, especially college students, care about their vote. Yeah.
Perfect. And what would you say was your most important issue that influenced you to vote this election season?
Yeah, I definitely think being on campus and being in LA and seeing like the homeless problem was definitely a big issue that I saw. So seeing both candidates and how they say that they're going to approach the homeless issue was definitely very intriguing to me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We toss it back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks so much, Avery. Reporter Liza Monosabian is at the LA County Register's headquarters in Norwalk. That's where the ballots are brought from precincts around the county. She sent this report in just a few minutes ago.
We're here in the final hour of voting at the county clerk's office in Norwalk, and voters are still showing up to vote. But that's really thanks to the poll workers who are here to help with this process and make sure that it runs seamlessly.
All Trojans carve their own path to get to USC. The path that Noah Alush took is one that some might consider non-linear.
I was a bit of a troublemaker growing up, hence why I joined the military. I deployed twice, one to Japan. I lived on a ship for about 2.5 months. And then on my second deployment, I went to the Middle East to Kuwait. What's cool about USC is it is one of the most veteran-friendly campuses in America. A lot of schools say they're veteran-friendly, but USC actually backs it up.
USC allows veterans to register for classes early. That's a privilege previously only granted to athletes. In 2017, the university eliminated application fees for veterans and their dependents.
Let's go to Hannah Joy in the Media Center with a panel discussion on poll workers.
Thank you so much, Dario. We have James Arengaren, and he was a poll worker in the 2020 election. And so my first question would be, why do people deny elections?
So there are 1.5 million different reasons why people deny the legitimacy of specifically the 2020 election. I mean, most of them have been told by authority figures that they trust over and over and over again that there are mysterious powers at be who are trying to subvert their rights and trying to take away things that they have in their lives. And so that, in combination with a lot of economic and social anxieties, makes it very, very easy for someone to become an election denier. It is deeply rooted in patterns of human behavior. Well, that's hard because obviously no one should be forced to do something that is dangerous to them. But also, poll workers and election workers in general are so vital to the maintenance of our country and our nation that it's very difficult for me to see any other way other than we need people in the field and we need people working during our elections and we need people making sure that the process is happening smoothly and efficiently and everyone's rights are being guaranteed. So honestly, I don't know. I don't. And this is the tough position that poll workers across the country, especially in competitive precincts and races, are being put into every day. So it's dependent on all of us to give those people the support that they need and to make sure that they are given the proper protection that they need.
And when we look at all of the events that happened in 2020, like civil unrest and COVID-19, why did you think it was so essential for you to be a poll worker during that time?
I mean, I just sort of thought to myself, who else was going to do it? You know, if you wait for other people to make sure that the process is running smoothly and that the nation is being governed correctly, you're going to have to wait a long time. So I just thought that the best way for me to serve my country and to serve my fellow citizens was to get involved in the process and was to make sure that the process was running smoothly.
And so can you tell us a little bit about the steps in the process as a poll worker to, get people to actually vote, your friends and family?
Yeah, so it's actually, from the perspective of a voter, a pretty easy process. You go into a check-in desk, you check in, you tell them your name, give them your information. I'm sorry, this is all in the state of California. Can't really speak to requirements in other states, but you check in, we give you a ballot if you're at the right precinct, and you go vote. And if you're not at the right precinct, we can either send you to the correct precinct, or there are these cool voting machines that can pull up your ballot with all the races that you're eligible to vote in, and then you make your selections, it prints out the ballot filled in, you can check it, and then you slip it in the ballot box and you have voted. So there are a bunch of different ways that people can exercise their right to vote, a bunch of different ways that people can make their voices heard. It's reflective of our rights and democracy in general. It's this diverse.
Thank you so much, James, and we really appreciate you for being here and sharing your experience with us, because we know that voting is so important, but it's so simple. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hannah. The time is now 8:15. Polls have closed in California. We're going to go to the Karen Bass watch party where reporter Olivia Tyler and Eric Ye are.
We are here at the Karen Bass watch party. She is hopefully arriving soon, but we have to talk about the number one issue for Angelenos this year, which is homelessness. Despite how much money has been thrown at the issue throughout the years, homelessness has gone up and Angelenos are upset. Tonight, 41,000 individuals will be falling asleep on the streets, and in weather like this, people are upset and they feel sad and they want it fixed now. Karen Bass's plan is to house 15,000 individuals within her first year and throughout the rest of her tenure, finished housing them temporarily and permanently. Rick Caruso's plan is to house 30,000 people through cots and shelter beds. Karen Bass does not think this is sustainable. She thinks the issue will just continue. Her plan costs about $300 million, while his costs about $800 million. She plans to marshal the resources of the federal, state, county, and city government. She wants a FEMA-like response, which means putting people in arenas and stadiums. She says this problem needs to be fixed now. She wants job training for people who are on the streets. She wants mental and substance abuse training. Also in Los Angeles County, we gave back $150 million in federal money for homelessness. So Angelenos are wondering why they want that money back. They want to make sure that their fellow individuals are falling asleep nicely and not on the streets in weather like this. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Olivia. It's a lot going on tonight, and so we're going to pass it over to Vince and Rachel at Rick Caruso's watch party.
Hey guys, how's it going? As you can see here behind me, the music has just started. Election night here at the Caruso Watch Party is finally getting underway. The venue up here is finally starting to get packed as well. And while we're here, I decided to talk a little bit about the kind of financial situation and advertisements that the Rick Caruso campaign has been pushing this year. Rick Caruso has had an extremely aggressive presence in advertising this year and this year's mayoral race. It seems that everywhere, both on local TV, streaming platforms, and all around the city, you can find advertisements for Rick Caruso, who has been super aggressive in his campaigning. And the numbers reflect that. Caruso has spent $88 million on this campaign, majority coming out of his own wallet. Again, Caruso is a billionaire and has a ton of money to spend on this campaign, compared to Karen Bass, who has spent about $8 million contenders in this race. Historically, the candidate who has spent the most money on the campaign has the tendency to win the election. However, we will see if that old adage stays true, as since the polls have officially closed here at 8, as the numbers start coming in, we will start to see whether or not Caruso is leading in the polls or whether it will be Karen Bass who's truly coming in top at the race tonight. And also, as a reminder, this is a runoff election from the election that had happened on June 7th. Since none of the candidates had reached the 50% majority, no mayor was crowned at that point for Los Angeles, and the two top contenders at the time, being Karen Bass and Rick Caruso, were automatically brought into this runoff election. So again, stick with us. We will keep you up to date with the numbers and see whether or not if it's Karen Bass on top or Rick Caruso throughout this election coverage. Thank you so much. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you, Vince. Homelessness has been top of mind for both candidates in the LA mayor's race, and as Hannah just discussed, for many voters, Congresswoman Bass has laid out her comprehensive plan to address the issue. That plan includes merging the resources of federal, state, local governments around a single plan, building more affordable and permanent housing, providing the unhoused with access to mental health and substance abuse services, and finally, access to job training and employment opportunities.
And to the other candidate, Rick Caruso's plan is to build new shelter beds across the city. That includes moving 30,000 people from the streets into indoors, and investing $800 million to his unhoused plan.
We continue this conversation with housing activist Martha Escudero from Reclaiming Our Homes, a movement that believes no one should be unhoused when homes are empty. Martha, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Martha, first question, how would you describe the state of homelessness in LA County as of right now?
I think it's an utter crisis, and it's really unfortunate because we have an abundance of resources and actually an abundance of housing. We don't need to build any more housing. We actually have 3 vacant homes per 1 unhoused person, and 5 people die a day on the streets, and I don't understand why these resources are misused or underused, or what's going on with the city, that it's underutilizing these services and resources and leaving people to die on the streets. It's like a crisis going on here.
Thank you, Martha. And so both candidates have really honed in on their platforms to address homelessness. What do you think about these plans, and which one would you rank to be the most effective?
I don't think either one would be effective, because I doubt they're consulting actually unhoused people and people that have lived experience. I feel we have a saying in a lot of our unhoused movement, nothing with us without us, and I feel there's no consent on what actual unhoused people need or want. For example, jobs. There's a lot of unhoused people that have jobs. The problem is that the rent is unaffordable, and even people with degrees and jobs can't pay rent in Los Angeles. And also that people use substances and need substance use to stop using substances. It's really difficult to stop using substances, and we need like more of a harm reduction method and have people address the root causes of these issues and their trauma, and also address things on a systemic level, that it's not an individual problem. It's a systemic issue that has underlying systems of oppression like white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism that put people over profit. That put profit over people. Actually, we need people over profit. We need elected officials that are more compassionate and that don't just dwell on power and money, just as we have seen the city officials and the city council scandal that happened.
And Martha, voters in LA consistently rank homelessness as one of their top issues. When voters head to the polls today, in your opinion, how important do you think it was to making up their mind?
I'm not sure on the mayoral race who would people need to vote for, but for sure the unhoused people and people in the housing movement that I know have been pushing a yes on Measure ULA, so we could have more affordable housing options, and people to remain housed, like people that are low income, to be able to have that security to remain housed. And also, speaking of affordability and affordable housing, it's important to have more than shelters, like Rick Caruso suggested. A lot of the shelters are very traumatic and triggering for unhoused folk that can't be in big settings or have really restricted rules that remind them of jail. And if they previously served time, it's really triggering for them. So there's other ways we could address trauma and keep people housed and have wraparound services that actually serve individual people and their individual needs. And we can't blanket unhoused people like as one whole. We're all very different.
And so you spoke a little bit about reducing those recidivism rates in housing. What specifically is your organization doing to implement policy measures to address this issue?
So right now we're working on a campaign because I personally have an eviction notice. I was in a temporary housing program that ended
Where are we going after
this October. And what they plan to do with me is put me in a hotel while they find affordable permanent housing. And so I can't stay in this house that was unseen by everyone in LA until we took it. And there's about 200 in this corridor that are owned by the state, by Caltrans. So we're trying to get Caltrans to have these houses affordable and given to the community of El Sereno Community Land Trust or by the individual Caltrans tenants that are already here. So these are some propositions we're handing to the state level to have what to do with the Caltrans homes. But in general, we also have LA County and city owned and even LA USD vacant homes that we want to propose to be used as affordable housing.
It's a conversation worth having and a problem that's not going anywhere anytime soon. Martha, thanks so much for joining us and offering your perspective. We're going to turn now back to the Media Center with Hannah for another panel discussion.
Thank you so much. Today we have Rudy Potash, and he is the co-president of Trojan Shelters here at USC. How are you doing today, Rudy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am good. So my first question I would like to ask you is, why are the unhoused such a big issue here in the election?
Yeah, of course. I think the reason it's such a big issue is, like, one, people see it. You know, there's over 69,000 people who are unhoused in LA County, and that's like not something that is like hidden. And I think also it touches on a very basic necessity that people believe. You know, everyone deserves housing, and seeing people who don't have housing is such a touching issue for a lot of Angelenos. And so I think that's why it's such a big political question and issue of today.
So can you explain to us what Trojan Shelters is really doing to help with that issue?
Of course. So Trojan Shelter is a student-run housing for unhoused college students in USC in the LA area. Basically, we provide housing for those students, and we also provide food, and we also provide casework for them. It is a small-scale solution, but we think that having college students do this work for their peers is really important, and it's supposed to at least help the issue for those college students that we serve.
And what policy changes do you believe, are needed here in LA?
Yeah, of course. I think there's a couple. One, there isn't enough housing in LA. I think everyone kind of knows that. So I think we need more housing. In turn, if we ever are going to fully address homelessness in LA, we also need to deal with issues that intersect it, like mass incarceration, addiction, and substance abuse and mental health. And there needs to also be more services for people who have addiction issues or who are mentally ill, so that they are also supported, because everyone deserves housing and also everyone deserves important supportive services. So there also needs to be more permanent supportive housing for unhoused Angelenos. And we also just need to be better and more efficient at using the money we have in LA to address this issue.
And what resources and what ways are you all at Trojan Shelters, what are you all providing to help college students?
So, Children's Shelter specifically, with our residents, we provide one-on-one casework. We also ensure that any food they may need, we have. We also obviously provide the housing itself. We believe that, to succeed in education, having stable housing, consistent housing is necessary. It's already a pretty stressful time, and so we want to ensure that the housing is not only stable but also safe. We want to create community and support networks. I think one of the things that people don't realize is that for the unhoused Angelenos, their support networks are much smaller than average Angelenos who have housing, and so we also want to provide a support network of other college students so that they can succeed. And I think that's also important that we provide for all unhoused Angelenos so that they have support networks in place so that if they ever falter and lose their housing again, there is a support network that's instant so that they can get housing, get the food, get the resources that they need.
So specifically, how have you seen college students excel academically when receiving these resources?
Of course. So I think we have seen personally that when someone has housing, has food, has a stable place, they're able to study, they're able to feel supported, they're able to find job interviews. Our residents are able to have these connections that they wouldn't have had when they're their energy is spent trying to find housing day to day, and that just automatically exponentially increases their chances to create support networks so that they have opportunity to find future careers and also succeed in college. Because if someone's going to succeed and they don't have stable and stability, then it's much more likely that they drop out. It's much more likely to have lower GPAs. And so I'm really proud and happy to say that Children's Shelter has been a resource for our residents so that they are able to succeed to their fullest extent because they have the resources that they deserve and that every college student deserves.
Thank you so much for being here, and we hope that you have a great night and support, Trojan Shelters. Have a good one.
Thank you, Hannah. We know housing and homelessness is a major issue here in LA County. And now we're going to pass it over to our national correspondent Maya.
Thanks so much. We have some updates for you and some projections. An update on the Georgia Senate race. We still see Herschel Walker up, but if you notice, his margin has decreased significantly. So Raphael Warnock is at this 48.9%. Herschel Walker is at 49.1%. Pull out the calculator. That's a difference of, and gosh, I hope I'm right, 0.02%. We can see this changing throughout the night, and we will continue to follow this race closely as the balance of power in the U.S. Senate is in this race, among a few others. Let's move to some of those others. We have an update for you on the Fetterman-Oz race. Now, John Fetterman is in the lead, but if I remember correctly, he had a much more substantial lead at the beginning of the show. Dr. Oz is starting to catch up. We talked about it. These early votes, these absentee ballots that get counted are usually favored towards the Democratic candidates. So now with Dr. Oz gaining in the numbers, we see that some of these in-person ballots are being cast and they seem to be favoring Dr. Oz and the Republican Party on this one. Now, I want to talk for a minute about a projection that AP has made. While we were talking about a few other things, the projection is for the Ohio Senate race. Now, Ohio is a little interesting. It was Tim Ryan, who's a member of the House of Representatives for Ohio, and J.D. Vance, who's an entrepreneur. Now, Ohio is currently held by Senator Rob Portman. Rob Portman is a Republican senator. This means that a Republican has kept the Ohio Senate seat. So it's not one of those flips that Democrats were hoping for, because a flip on either side would help one party reach that 50 or 51 threshold. I don't know if we talked about this yet, but the balance of power as it currently stands in the Senate is 50-50. Democrats have 50 members of the U.S. Senate, and Kamala Harris, if there's ever a 50-50 tie, will act as the tiebreaker. So that works really, really well in Democrats' favors. But if Republicans can hold on to all their seats, as they held on to an Ohio seat, and flip one Democratic seat, they then become the 51-50 majority in the U.S. Senate. So we'll be following everything very, very closely. That's all from me. We're going to toss it back to the desk.
So many close races in that USN. It's going to come down to the wire, Maya. Thank you so much. Let's get another check at that student watch party in Wallace-Annenberg Hall in Studio A.
Thanks, guys. I'm here right now with Vote SC's Vice President and Director of Communications, Kavina Collins. Thank you so much for joining me. So what are some methods of outreach that you have used to get Gen Z to vote this election?
Vote SC specifically likes to utilize social media. I know that Gen Z is very engaged there, so we try to do outreach, tabling on campus when people are catching them coming out of class, holding posters, yelling at them, "Are you registered to vote?" We try to not bribe them, but say, "Hey, do you want some free candy?" A little incentive there. But I think definitely media. I think that's one way that politicians and candidates in the last couple of years have really got Gen Z voters out is through social media efforts.
Thank you so much, Kavina. Back to you guys in the studio.
And now we're going to head to the break. Stay tuned for more elections coverage.
Leaving hot coals improperly extinguished can cause a wildfire.
Hey guys, it's Smokey!
It looks as if Smokey is going to use the drown, stir, drown and feel technique. After the first drown, a good start. Next, another drink. And finally, a close feel.
Is it cool? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Smokey, catch! Oh, my bad, Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
I'll never forget the day our landlord called and said, "Read your lease. No pets allowed." My owner tells him my dog ate the lease, but that didn't work. And now I'm stuck in a shelter. But this pit bull is ready for a new crib. I'm loving, loyal, and play well with others. So don't be intimidated by all my muscles, because the biggest one I have is my heart. That's right, I said it.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The time is 8:36, and let's go to the Caruso's campaign watch party, where a reporter Rachel Howlett is there live.
Hi guys, thank you so much. Yes. Hi guys, thank you so much. I'm here at the watch party and it is raining, it's pouring, but that has not stopped Caruso supporters for coming out and supporting him in this mayoral race. People are coming in droves. Right now they're enjoying some light bites, but pretty soon, later tonight, we expect them to fill in behind me here and join in hopefully celebrating this mayoral debate or this mayoral campaign. In terms of supporters, Rick Caruso has also received a lot of support over social media, and in true Hollywood form, he's gotten some high-profile celebrities posting about him. These celebrities include Kim Kardashian, Elon Musk, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Snoop Dogg. And most recently, Katy Perry posted on her Instagram in the ballot box saying that she would be voting for Rick Caruso for mayor. But today we're seeing a lot of people out here in person, and we expect to see some more coming through soon. Thanks so much. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Rachel. It looks like the crowds are coming in at that watch party, and so we're going to turn it over to Eric at the Bass watch party.
Thanks, Danielle. As Jacob said earlier, the polling centers in California have officially closed. And as we understand it, AP has already started to call some races, but here we are just starting to count the votes. The atmosphere here at the Hollywood Palladium for Karen Bass's watch party has become definitely more energetic and lively. We've started some guest speakers, as you see. We have, let's see, Alex Padilla, voted U.S. Senator, the first Latino from California to sit Senate, is currently speaking. And as we mentioned earlier, this is a runoff election. Bass won the primary 43-36, but was unable to get the 50% to avoid it. Coming into today, she led 45-41. That's a 4-point percentage lead. Now, this is definitely less than a month ago. She had a 15-point percentage lead 1 month ago. And this could be attributed to the amount of spending, as we mentioned earlier in the program. Caruso spent about $100 million in campaign ads to Bass's $8 million. And as we said earlier, if Bass is elected mayor, she'll become the first black woman mayor in LA. And back to you in the media center.
Thank you so much, Eric. And we're receiving some reports that Stacey Abrams out of Georgia has called Georgia Governor Kemp to concede that race, indicating that Governor Kemp has won his re-election. What are the implications of this race, Darielle?
I think it's a very devastating race as far as, knowing that she ran against Kemp in 2018 and now we're here in 2022 and she's faced another defeat. There's a lot of conversation around just voter accessibility, voter suppression, voter turnout in the polls. So I think it was a lot at stake, and I think Democrats really wanted to seize, that mansion, but they weren't able to do so.
Absolutely. And staying on this Georgia race, Governor Kemp, who is that incumbent, he did notably break away from the former president during the election denialism when that was happening across the country during the 2020 election. Kemp did take a stand. He broke from other Republicans and kind of distanced himself, and I think he's getting a benefit from that at the polls. He's way outperforming Herschel Walker in that Senate race, which still is a razor-thin margin, with about 88% of the vote in. Herschel Walker is at 49%, and Warnock is at around 48.8%. But again, Stacey Abrams facing another defeat there, and it's important to know that there are conversations about voter accessibility, but early turnout was record-breaking in Georgia, right?
And I think the reason why, Kemp has shied away from the election denial is predominantly because, he's in this election, he's in this race, and he wants to make sure that the integrity of Georgia's election is heard and understood by everyone, that, they are fair, elections are fair, you can turn out, you can support, and you can do what you need to do in the election. So I think ultimately his biggest thing was really showing the integrity of the elections as the Secretary of State as well. So
absolutely. And staying on the governor's races, let's shift to Arizona now. This is a very high-profile race between Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, Kari Lake. She's that former TV news anchor. She's made a lot of headwinds across the country. She's gotten national attention. Right now, we can say 51% of the vote in. Katie Hobbs is leading with 56.8% of the vote compared to Kari Lake's 43%. But again, that's only half the vote in. A lot of that in Arizona comes in with the mail-in ballots first. The real election vote is to follow. There were some hiccups in Maricopa County this morning. The Republican National Committee tried to sue to extend the polling hours. A judge rejected that, so the polls closed on time in Arizona. But this is a trend we're seeing across the country with these Republican candidates who are not, they're keeping in line with that Trump profile with being the outside candidates. Where else are we seeing that across the country?
I think another example of that would be in the Pennsylvania race with Dr. Oz. He was very adamant about stepping away and identifying himself as a moderate. I think he's done his best. Kind of going into the election, we saw a little bit of difference, but now he's doing his best to try to step away from, the previous administration's, goals and initiatives and expectations, and really focus on his mission in driving home crime, driving home really those key issues that suburban voters care about.
Exactly. And going back to Arizona, Katie Hobbs, she had a really pretty good lead before October and November, and then she obviously refused to debate Kari Lake. That has kind of hurt her in the polls. But Kari Lake, what's interesting about Arizona, John McCain, the former Republican senator there, he is an icon there in Arizona. So the real question in Arizona is, are those John McCain-like Republicans going to get behind someone like Kari Lake, who is more extreme than John McCain, who has backed Donald Trump, who is a fervent supporter of Donald Trump? I saw today in a press conference she said that she would support him wholeheartedly if he decided to run in 2024. So again, results still coming in Arizona. It's going to be really interesting to watch.
And to your point, Jacob, I think they really have identified Kari Lake as the spokesperson for the Republican Party. She's had a lot of, candidates, kind of going with her on her campaign trail. Like you said, she's spoken very adamantly about her support for Trump. And she's also speaking out very adamantly about, just the elections and the integrity of the elections. To your point earlier, going into early morning and the voting, she was really adamant about saying, we have our lawyers and we're prepared to see what these outcomes are. So
absolutely, we're going to keep an eye on all of these races, including in Arizona, where it's going to go to the big board with Maya, our national correspondent.
Thanks so much, guys. All right, I am out here with an Annenberg favorite, the director of the Media Center, Christina Bellantoni. But before gracing us with her presence at Annenberg, Christina was the politics editor at the LA Times. Christina, tell me how you feel about what we're seeing tonight.
I love election nights. I love the vibe in the newsroom, being part of it, but also watching democracy happen is really exciting. Overall, the big picture that I've been watching is that it's not what a lot of people were expecting, that you would see a lot of House races start flipping to Republicans. As you just pointed out in your really great Senate analysis, the Senate seats, we have not seen turnovers. We've seen Democrats thought they had a chance in a few seats where they were either open or a weak incumbent, and they're not picking them up there. And Republicans haven't been able to flip anything yet. We're still obviously waiting on a lot of results, but I think that some Democrats are breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief. California, the polls just closed. So what do we know? Well, of course, Gavin Newsom's reelected. We're seeing the votes kind of slowly trickle in. This could be weeks before we know what the national picture is based on these California House races. And it seems like it's going to be close enough that we're going to be waiting on some of those races to see who controls the House.
Christina, I know you have a lot of experience with election nights, and I know the political landscape has changed ever since that 2016 election. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton. Do you expect that tonight will be more like a traditional election night where we might know that balance of power in one of the houses, this House or the Senate, or do you think it'll be a 2016, 2020 kind of night where we are waiting?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little early to know, right? We've only had polls closed here in California for 45 minutes, but it seems as if all of the races that I was watching closely, the toss-up House races and some of the most competitive Senate races, are too close to call. Obviously, Georgia, we're looking at Pennsylvania. I mean, these are margins of error, like very, very, very razor tight. And in a lot of cases, there were problems at the polls, so they kept the polling places open later. There's obviously absentee ballots that are getting counted. So I think it's very possible we don't know the balance of power tonight, or it's just later. It's going to be a late night. And, the good news for us is that there's always tomorrow to keep reporting. But for me, it's a vibe where there's a lot on the line. People are telling pollsters when they go out to the polls today, they're voting for the health of democracy, but they're also voting for inflation. That tells me that there's two distinctive large groups that are showing up to cast a ballot, and that they're not necessarily in agreement. It's that there's high turnout on both sides, and that really doesn't tell me which way it's going to go.
Christina, it's almost like you read my mind. I was just about to ask you about some of these issues, but more importantly, the messaging from the two sides. In your opinion, do you think that the Democrats and Republicans did a good job with their messaging?
So this is a really way that you can look at some of these micro races. You were just talking about the Ohio Senate race. So Congressman Tim Ryan, I've covered him for many years. He is more of a conservative Democrat. He would frequently talk about, I don't want to discuss woke issues. I want to talk about bread and butter issues like what's on the kitchen table, what's in your pocketbook. And a lot of progressive Democrats were actually like pretty irritated with him that that's the campaign that he chose to run. He wasn't, you know, the AOC Bernie Sanders type to really grab that yes, I'm a proud Democrat, I'm a leftist Democrat. And the question is going to be, if Democrats end up prevailing in some of these places, is it that leftist Democrat that wins, the John Fettermans of the world, when Tim Ryan was not able to win over a candidate who was extremely flawed and had, you know, made a lot of different conversions in his own political philosophy over the years. So for me, watching that race play out, I wonder if we're going to see more and more of that as we go forward. And if Joe Biden and Joe Biden's party does lose the House and or the Senate by the end of this election contest, you're going to hear people talk about, is somebody going to primary him on the Democratic side?
We talked about the past, we've talked about the present, and now I want to ask you about the future. Both parties have made a lot of promises for what they'll make happen if they take the House or the Senate, the House and the Senate. Realistically, what are some changes that we might expect if Republicans take control of the House and Senate, or if Democrats maintain control?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's say Republicans win control of the Senate. I don't think you will see any changes. You need 60 votes to get most things through. It's going to be extremely closely divided. If they're able to win, it will maybe be a 1 or 2 vote margin. You can't get anything done. So they're already not getting much done. There's still not going to be much done. If Republicans win the House, which is the more likely scenario, they didn't need to win very many seats to get that power. You're going to see a fight over who's going to be Speaker. Maybe that's Kevin McCarthy of California, but maybe it's not. Out there on the campaign trail, I actually took a lot of Annenberg students from my classes out into congressional races over the last year. All of the Republican candidates told all of us, the reporters, that they didn't like Kevin McCarthy for Speaker. They wanted someone more conservative. So there's going to be some agitation there. In the end, maybe it's him. But the Republicans have already signaled they're going to put money into a border wall. They're going to have fights over immigration. They're going to launch investigations into the Biden administration. Potentially try to pursue impeachment. It would not surprise me at all if we see that immediately when a new Congress is sworn into office in January. And it will just take a lot of time. You know, now we see the January 6th commission. It will be the Hunter Biden's laptop commission. And in the end, it's a lot of theater, and it will just all be the lead up to 2024, whether Donald Trump is going to run for president again. And the House Republicans will kind of have to answer, are they Donald Trump's Republicans? That will be a big question the Democrats try to push them on going forward.
A big question and a big night. Thank you so much to Christina Bellantoni. Back to you guys in the studio.
Christina Bellantoni, our politics expert there. She's been on Spectrum News tonight. She's there in the media center. She's making her rounds, and we really appreciate her. Bringing elections back home here in LA, both candidates for LA mayor have Trojan ties. That is why this race is a reminder of the influence USC has on LA politics. USC is the largest private employer in the county, so the next mayor will likely work closely with university administration.
Both Democrats Caruso and Bass have ties to the Trojan family as well as some USC scandals. Caruso graduated from USC in 1980 and until recently served as chairman of the board of trustees. Under his watch, the varsity blues and gynecologist scandals were uncovered and rocked the campus community. Caruso defends his USC tenure but stepped down as chairman when he launched his campaign.
There wasn't lack of transparency, so I disagree respectfully with the premise of your question. I was brought in as chair to clean up USC, and I did. The Tyndall, there's not one report, but think about this. We went to every expert when we were done. We settled with the victims. It was terrible what happened to them, but every expert told us not to release any detailed information because it re-victimizes the people. It wouldn't be right, it wouldn't be fair. But there's about 700 pages of information that has been on the USC website for a couple years now that gives enough information without giving details and names. And so I have been very transparent. I've been honest about it. If it was just up to me, I would probably maybe release some more. But at the same time, I don't want to hurt anybody. These people, these wonderful students, have been so dramatically hurt. Let's just worry about taking care of them and not worry about releasing more information that would hurt them. Yeah, just to be clear, I never announced when I said I was going to run for mayor, I never stepped down as a trustee. I stepped down as chair, right? When I'm elected mayor, I will step off the board. The proudest accomplishment is working with my fellow trustees and changing the direction of the school and changing the leadership of the school and bringing in the first African-American woman as an interim president and the first woman president of USC. But look at what's happened to USC now. The wind is at the back. The university is doing great. The scandals are over and cleaned up. There's accountability. And I'm just very proud of what everybody's done. I'm very proud of Carol Folt. She's an amazing president.
Karen Bass graduated from the USC Keck School of Medicine Physician Assistant Program in 1982. As a nurse and clinical instructor, she witnessed and organized a response to the crack epidemic in South LA. Bass also received her master's in social work from USC in 2015. She also was allegedly accepted a $95,000 scholarship from the dean without any formal application. The congresswoman denies wrongdoing, but she has been pulled into a federal corruption case involving former county supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas.
First of all, let me just correct the record. I received a scholarship after I applied to the school, so that's not accurate. Second of all, this is basically a case of Rick Caruso wanting to muddy up the waters around USC to essentially divert attention from his lack of leadership over the Tyndall case. No one was grooming me. I initiated a piece of legislation that had nothing to do with the dean. No, I am proud that I received the scholarship. The scholarship was based on merit and the years that I have worked trying to transform the nation's child welfare system. Mr. Caruso, as the chairman of the Board of Trustees, have given the authority to deans at USC to have discretionary power to award scholarships. I don't make decisions based on whether I'm going to run for an office or not. I wanted to go to school to deepen my understanding of the child welfare, of the social work profession and the child welfare issue nationally so that I could be a better legislator. I do not regret that. I did absolutely nothing out of the ordinary. I had originally applied for the public administration degree and school. And if you apply for graduate school at USC, one application is used by different schools.
And we want to give you an update on that LA's mayoral race. We are getting our first batch of results, and according to the Associated Press, with only 10% of the vote in, Karen Bass has 50.8% compared to Rick Caruso's 49.2%. So it's becoming a very close race, as the polls indicated.
I agree, Jacob. I think it all is about how, each party, as far as Democratic voters versus, Republican voters turn out in the polls. And that might be showing why she's seeing some lead in the polls right now. But it's going to be interesting to see how this night goes. Yeah, again, only 10% of votes in. It's going to be a very long night in that race, but it'll be very interesting. Let's go to Studio A with another check on that watch party happening in Wallace Annenberg Hall.
Thank you, Jacob. It's going to be a very long night indeed. Now, at 8 o'clock just then, at the Annenberg Watch Party, the polls have closed in California, just not so long ago. And right now I'm here with Sophia Perez, USC student and director of Political Student Assembly. So, Sophia, what's going on out there? How do you like it so far?
The elections in general are very stressful, but the watch party is amazing. I mean, I've been here for 3 years now. I'm a current junior, and my freshman year it was COVID, so all on Zoom. So this is the first time they've done it this large of a scale since then, and it's great. I mean, having all of our poli-sci-minded kids out here, Bob Strum, the director of CPF, it's great.
Yeah, wonderful to hear. So what are some bigger issues that really prompted you to go and vote for the polls tonight?
Yeah, so I just voted in person today right here at Vermont Elementary School. And so I'm a Los Angeles native. A lot of the ones on mind for me, as I'm sure are for a lot of people during this election, is homelessness. I mean, that's a huge one that's been a problem that's plaguing our community for a long time. Abortion rights in Proposition 1, whether it's going to be codifying in the state constitution. Education rights for students. the reform of crime here. The sheriff is up for election as well in this election on the ballot. So all of those.
Yes, really important topics here. And let's talk about something else. AP already called the win of Democratic candidate for the House, Maxwell Frost, for Florida's 10th congressional district. He is the first member of Gen Z for Congress, and Maura Healey, the first openly gay candidate for governor in Massachusetts. As a member of USC and obviously in the Los Angeles community as an American as well, how do you think this will impact the future of our government and our country, our future leaders, you think?
Yeah, representation is a huge thing that in this nation we are lacking. The ability for us to see people who look like us, who can vote on issues and who know issues and how to address them, because, they are like us, is what we need in democracy and in our representatives right now. So I think it's an amazing thing.
Thank you so much, Sophia. Hope you enjoy the rest of the Annenberg Watch Party. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Tracy. Now we're going to turn it over to Rachel and Vincent at Caruso's Watch Party.
Hi guys, and it is crazy with those first numbers coming in, how close this race truly is. It's definitely going to be up to some of those undecided Angelino voters. And last week actually, I was able to interview with Rick Caruso and get a sense for how his voters kind of portray him. And at this kind of town hall meeting a week before tonight's election, it was really interesting hearing some of his supporters and what they're looking for in a candidate. One of the big things was being tough on crime and wanting kind of, someone who can help reform both the police system and help clean up LA. And a second one was that Rick Caruso is not your typical politician, that he's a businessman. One person out there even called him Donald Trump, similar to Donald Trump. So it's very interesting how this race is now turning out and how close it happens to be. How are you what do you think about kind of this Angelino kind of undecided thought about this, Rachel?
Thank you, Vincent. The energy here tonight, it's huge. It's positive. People are coming in droves to support Rick Caruso. The main thing I've heard is the supporters of Rick Caruso, they're looking for someone new. They want something different. Homelessness is a huge issue. Crime and affordable housing, all huge issues that everyone here believes Rick Caruso can help and fix LA with those issues. So I guess we'll see as more numbers come in through the rest of the night. We'll keep watch.
Since the race is so close, we got a long night ahead, and it's sure that we're probably not going to get the results of the mayoral election tonight, but I'm sure within the next few days we will find out who the next mayor of LA is. I'm Vincent Amonte.
And I'm Rachel Hallen.
And back to you guys.
Vincent and Rachel, thank you so much. Let's take another look at the Basses campaign, where Olivia Tyler and Eric Ye is there.
So we're here at the Karen Bass Watch Party. As you can hear, it is lively behind us. So we have a question. Why would Karen Bass want to leave powerful DC? She has such an important role on the federal and level on Capitol Hill. But she says it's because she wants to make change at the crisis at home. One of those big things is policing. She wants to free up 250 police officers who are stuck behind desks and put those officers into the community for communities that are asking for more policing. Eric, can you tell us a little bit about how she is prepared for a role like this?
Yes, definitely, Olivia. Karen Bass has 20 years of political career under her belt. As I said, she started in 2004 when she was first elected to the California State Assembly for the 47th District. The first black woman for that position, by the way. Then in 2008, she was the first black woman to be the Speaker of the California State Assembly. So if she becomes LA's mayor, she'll be the first black woman for LA's mayor. So she's hoping to add on to that resume. I'm going to I said 20 years, right? So she has represented California's 37th district since 2012, being re-elected every time. And with every election, she won by 80%. So it was really convincing then. Now, obviously now, you heard earlier in the program that it is 50-49, very close. But we have the mail-in ballot count still. And traditionally, the Democrats hold an edge then. So it's still a long night. We'll wait and see. But Karen Bass, she's banking on her political career, her LA nativeness, to hopefully, win this race.
Yeah, and Eric, another thing is 50% of Angelinos today are of the Latin American community. So both Karen Bass and Rick Caruso are really pulling that community. They really want their votes. They have been campaigning and really listening to those communities because they hold a big spot in this race. So we'll see who turns out, what communities vote, and how it ends up. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Olivia and Eric. I think Latino voters has been a priority demographic across the country. And now we're going to turn it over to Maya to focus more on our gubernatorial races.
Thanks so much. All right, so on your screen, you see this graphic. 51 seats are needed for the majority. Right now, as the races are being called, Democrats have 42 seats. Republicans have 44 seats. Democrats need 9 seats to make it to the 51. Republicans need a significant number as well. It's still too early to call in the night. Let's talk about some of these races. Well, actually, for a minute, I want to backtrack. Let's talk about the House of Representatives. Yesterday, there were 220 Democrats in the House who were sitting members and 212 Republicans. As it stands right now, Democrats have 112 seats, Republicans have 161. This is confirmed from the races that have been called. You can see on the graphic on your screen, Democrats lost 4 seats, Republicans gained 3 seats. We'll really be watching throughout the night, and as our guest Christina said, throughout the next couple of days to see who crosses this threshold for what's needed in the majority. In the United States House of Representatives, we have 435 members. So you need a 218, 219 for a clear majority in the United States House of Representatives. Let's take a look at Arizona for a minute. Arizona is a Senate race that people will be watching closely. Now, you may or may not remember the significance of the Arizona Senate seat, but that was a seat held by the late John McCain for over 30 years. So, as we mentioned earlier, Republicans started out with 50 seats. Republicans need to essentially maintain John McCain's seat in order to have more of an advantage going into crossing over to that 51 threshold. We mentioned earlier, there are so many key races happening in Arizona tonight. We've got a really tight House race. We've got this Arizona Senate race, which will be huge in determining the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. And we also have the Arizona governor's race. Right here, we see Georgia. The governor of Georgia has been projected for Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp is a one-term incumbent. He will now be a 2-term governor. Brian Kemp was going against Stacey Abrams. And as our anchor so eloquently said, this was a rematch, essentially a rematch between Kemp and Abrams. But Abrams has since called Kemp, according to the New York Times, and conceded the race. Now, in 2018, the last time Kemp and Abrams ran against each other for governor, there was a lot of talk that, or there were claims by Stacey Abrams that there was voters who weren't able to get to the polls to vote, but she has since conceded the race. I'm going to toss it back to our anchors for more on some of these other races.
Yeah, so we're getting some results in the California House races. Let's go to Marco with results on District 9 and 13, possibly, Marco.
Right, so let's talk about District 9. This is going to be in the greater Stockton area, and this is a district that is going to lean Democratic. It's a close battle between Josh Harder, the Democratic incumbent, versus Republican Tom Potty. Now, if you look at the voter registration here, Democrats have a voter registration advantage of 43.5%, Republicans of 28.4%. Now, this is an agricultural heavy district. Furthermore, if we look into commuters, there's a lot of people in this district that are commuting outside of the district to work tech jobs in outer cities of the Bay Area. Now, Josh Harder is someone who has experience. He is a Harvard business graduate and a venture capitalist investor. He actually represented the 10th district since 2019. But however, after the redrawing of district lines, he moved to the 9th district. And his competitor, Tom Potty, the Republican, he stayed more local. He went to San Joaquin Delta College, a local business owner. So this is definitely a close race and one that does a district that does lean Democratic. But let's hop right into the proposition here. We just got news that Proposition 28 passed. This is the proposition that deals with arts and music funding. Now, normally when schools cut their budget, the first thing to go is arts and music funding. So now that this proposition is passed, it's going to secure permanent funding for the programs here. And in fact, now that it's passed, $1 billion is going to go towards the arts and music programs. And only 1 in 5 schools have a full-time teacher devoted to arts and music programs. Backers of this proposition include Austin Butner, who's the former superintendent of LAUSD. He said that when schools don't have arts and music programs, it kind of creates this rippling effect where students don't perform well in other subjects such as math and science. But now that these schools are going to have permanent funding, this is going to create a better overall well-being for the students. Opponents of this proposition, there was actually not a lot on the argument ballot, and that is probably the reason why this proposition passed.
Wow, what a night. So many races, propositions, House races, Senate races all around, and just we have so many more results to cover. You can always follow more details and more poll results on annenbergmedia.com. My name is Jacob Wheeler. Thanks for watching.